It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport and beyond. Tonight, criminal barrister and former Justice Secretary under Boris Johnson, Sir Robert Buckland KBE MP. Sir Robert was previously Solicitor General for England and Wales, having been appointed to that role by the then Prime Minister David Cameron. Remember him? And he most recently served as Secretary of State for Wales, which must have been a proud moment given the fact that Sir Robert is a proud Welshman. He's been the Conservative Member of Parliament for South Swindon since 2010, and I'm delighted to say that Sir Robert Buckland, KBE MP, joins me now. Sir Robert, welcome to GBNews.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
A proud moment for you to be knighted by the King, November of last year, and I believe you were his first man to knight.
I was. A great honour to have that particular distinction, and a great pleasure for me to be received by our new king. And my parents were there as well, so it was a very special moment for
And you
me.
are a proud Welshman. I know you weren't in post that long as Welsh Secretary, but that would have been a happy moment for you and your family.
Well, indeed it was. Although I'm representing an English seat, I'm very much a British politician. I believe in our UK, and therefore it was a big honour for me to serve, however briefly, in that office. Perhaps I'm lucky not to be there yesterday because Wales' start in the Six Nations has not been the greatest. We're a bit worried about their performance thus far, so I leave that to my successor to tough it out.
Yeah, indeed. Come on, Wales. Given the legal and diplomatic challenges, can Rishi Sunak stop the boats?
Well, I think that he's proving through the detail that he's been examining and the announcements he's made that he's got what it takes to stop the boats, because the short headline is, Mark, there's no poetry in this. There's no grand sweeping answer to stop what is a practical problem. This is going to take hard graft. This is going to take work like the bilateral deal that we need to do with Albania to stop criminals coming here and exploiting particularly young people in our country. That, I think, can happen, and we need to work on a country-by-country basis to really eliminate the source of this problem and, of course, tackle the criminality that underlies this latest manifestation of illegal migration into the UK.
Yes, am I right in thinking that no Albanian should be entering the UK illegally and remaining?
Well, in a nutshell, yes. I mean, Albania is a safe country. It's a European country. There hasn't been strife there for many, many years. You know, there's a whole range of other reasons underlying this behaviour that we need to tackle. And, you know, small boats is, if you like, the latest manifestation of what we had a few years ago with lorries. Remember the terrible suffocation incidents?
Yeah, shocking.
Now, and you know, the government and the authorities dealt with that through heat-seeking devices and other technology. You know, if we can end small boats, the reality is that we probably have drones or some sort of air-based incursion.
Do you think that's really possible?
Well, I think these are people who want to make money, and there are desperate people out there who'll pay whatever it takes to get into the UK. So we are facing organised criminality here, and therefore our operational capacity has to be at tip-top in order to deal with it. And that's why I get a bit impatient about some of the arguments I hear about the European Convention and about the law. I don't really think that cuts what is a really practical problem.
So you think the ECHR issue, ditching our sort of acknowledgement of that law, which is now in English statute, you think that's a red herring, ditching the ECHR?
I think it's a complete red herring. I mean, in the last year...
But wouldn't it allow us to ignore the rulings of European courts?
Well, European court rulings, unless they directly engage the UK, are advisory only anyway. It's not like that the EU court, which had a binding authority on anything to do with EU law in Britain. It's a totally different type of court. It's advisory. Do you know, I was looking at the figures. In the last year, the UK was found in breach of the convention only 2 times in the year. Russia, by the way, 347 times. Now, that tells you really about the reach of this court. I think that its control is overplayed. I think there's far too much cheap rhetoric about it. Let's focus upon what we can do domestically here, and also, frankly, you know, when it comes to safe routes of passage, if we can create a route of integrity through a British embassy or a High Commission, then we can say to those people who aren't taking those legitimate routes, what the hell are you doing on a boat? Why are you coming into our country clearly in an unlawful way when you've got the option of taking a safe and lawful route?
But those safe routes would not be on the UK mainland, crucially.
Not on the mainland. Yeah. And I think, you know, this point about having appeals abroad, do you know, I was a minister who actually passed domestic domestic legislation in order to allow that to happen back in 2016. It was our domestic courts that actually ruled that that was not possible. I think it's absolutely right that we revisit those issues and push things as far as we can. But I think talk about withdrawal from a convention that British Conservative lawyers wrote back in 1950 threatens to put us out in the same place as Russia.
Foisted upon us by Tony Blair in 1999.
Well, the Human Rights Act, of course, was the new Labour creation. Now, when I was Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary, I wanted to carry out the manifesto commitment to reform and update that to make it really much more fit for purpose in the 2020s. The government's come up with a Bill of Rights, which I think is, frankly, a bit of a Christmas treat, an all bells, all whistles approach that I don't think we need. Let's use the common law of this country, let's use our parliamentary statute, and let's create the right balance between the need to have rights, but also the need to protect our own freedoms as well.
You don't see Strasbourg as a potential legal stumbling block to stopping the boats, fundamentally?
Look, cases will be brought, and ultimately there might be a challenge that takes us to Strasbourg. Frankly, looking at the number of cases where the UK is found in breach, I don't think it's anything we should worry ourselves about, to the extent that we should leave an institution that we helped create. And that's why I think wasting time and energy on talking about withdrawal is costing us time at the expense of the practical solutions that I think Rishi Sunak has been focusing on.
Keen to get to some other issues, but last point on this, because it's very important to many of my viewers. Could we establish the principle that if you enter the country illegally, you will not receive asylum, which is something that has been hinted at by Rishi Sunak? Can that work legally? Is that morally and politically and legally the right thing to do?
Well, I think that already we've got presumptions, and indeed in laws that we passed last year when I was in government, we've already created a lot of presumptions about illegal arrival and the method of arrival in the UK determining your status. I think as a fair and tolerant country, we'll always have room for people who are genuine victims of political and social persecution. That's our great tradition, from the Huguenots right through to the modern era.
Illegally.
Well, there might.
So you wouldn't tar everyone with the same brush.
Yeah, there might be some cases where that could be looked at. But this is the point, Mark. I think if people come forward early and say why they're here, we can avoid this repeat application process that we often get with people, which just prolongs the agony and makes this a very drawn-out process. But at the same time, we need more resources to get on with these cases and get them through the system far more efficiently.
By all accounts, you were a brilliant and reforming Justice Secretary. The then chair of the Justice Select Committee, Sir Bob Neill, said you'd been shabbily treated on departure from the role. I can see no good reason for it at all. He was doing a good job as Justice Secretary, crucially understood the constitutional importance of the Lord Chancellor as a guardian of the justice system, and he was entirely loyal to the Prime Minister. I think he's been shabbily treated. You said, you've always been very dignified about it since you left that office. It doesn't seem, from what I've read and what I understand, that it had much to do with my work. You left that job and, you were replaced by Dominic Raab, who I don't think has covered himself in glory in recent roles, certainly among his employees. Is he a vicious bully? Should he stand down?
Well, look, there's an ongoing investigation into those matters. I'm not going to comment about it. I'm not in a position to comment. I mean, Dominic wasn't a minister in the department with me. I've not seen him in the department.
Have you heard rumours he's a bit of a difficult boss?
Well, look, we've all heard what we've heard. And we read the newspapers. But I'm going to let due process take its course. You'd expect me to say that as a lawyer. What I will say about my time is that I'm very proud of the fact that we tightened up sentencing law. We increased the proportion of time in prison that serious rapists and violent offenders serve. And we really I worked very hard to make sure that sentencing law made more sense. Yeah. Now, it's not perfect, but I do think in the 2 or so years I had at the department, my knowledge of the criminal justice system and my experience of it as a prosecutor and a defender meant that I was able to get on with the job and make those changes. And I wish that I'd had more time and space to carry on with that work, to support our police, to reform the system, to get those prosecutions running well, and to make sure that people felt that the justice system actually meted out that fairness and justice that this country has a great reputation for, and which, in recent years we've been under huge pressure about, particularly with the COVID crisis as well, affecting the courts and the way that they worked. So unfinished business for me, but a huge honour to have served in those 2 years.
I've only got a few seconds left. I'm sure that there's a chance you could re-enter the cabinet after the next election, but you'd need to win that election first. What are the chances of Rishi Sunak achieving a majority in the next election?
Well, do you know, having been in many elections, Mark, I've won and I've lost elections. I was in the 97 deluge, I won in 2010 and won in 2019. I think it's still all to play for. I am not convinced from my conversations on the doorstep, which I have most weeks with my residents, that they are yet sold on Keir Starmer and Labour. I don't think they see the substance there that they need to convince them that Labour is ready for government. We've got a lot of work to do as a Conservative Party to convince the country that we are fit for the next 5 years. But I think it's all to play for, and I think that election is still there to be won.
Yes, because you supported Rishi Sunak, but then you swapped support to Liz Truss, but you're supporting Rishi again now.
Well, look, I think we should get behind the leader now. You know, it's important that the Conservative Party unites.
Is he the Prime Minister?
I think he's working extremely well. I think he's proving that he can do the job, and he's making the right calls. And he's somebody of integrity who's working hard. That's, I think, what the country needs at this time of huge pressure on our economy, on our energy prices, and on, indeed, our very security, both in terms of defence, food and energy, and all the things that matter to all of us who love this country. Always a pleasure to have a Knight of the Realm on the show. Thank you, Mark. Especially a Welshman. So my thanks to Sir Robert Buckland MP. Lots more to come, including next up, The Papers with full panel reaction. See you shortly.